What's going on, everybody? I am Dane Martinez, the Spittin' Statistician, and welcome back to another episode from the Action Network podcast on the Expert's Guide on How to Bet. Today, we're talking about the NFL, and when it comes to betting the NFL, who better to have explain it to us than our guy, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, our guy Stuckey. What's going on, brother man? How are you?
Hey, what's going on, dude? Happy to be here.
Right,
And football, this just like, it's, kind of getting your feet wet if you're new to betting, or if you just, like football's coming is the most important thing. I'm excited.
No, absolutely. And football is king, and everybody bets football. I mean, literally, I remember myself back in middle school organizing a pick'em pool, collecting $5 from everybody, telling people don't forget to fill in the points for Monday Night Football. So it is pretty much germane to our existence in this country. But I got to ask you, tell me a little bit about your background in betting football. You know, I've seen you've made hundreds, if not thousands of bets, but tell us a little bit about your background. Why are you the expert we're talking to today?
Yeah, I've been betting the NFL going on almost every weekend for right about 20 years. And I'm in my mid 30s now. So I started back in high school like you, and I was awful at first, like everybody. And it took a lot of time, effort, energy, and then you get smarter over time. You start to understand the markets. We'll get into a lot of this, but I've become obviously a lot better over the years. And the app this will be, I think, my 6th year betting the NFL on the app. I have about 9,200 bets, 1,100 in the NFL. It's about over 100 weeks, around 6% ROI. But the way that I started betting the NFL was actually, I played football since I was like running around with like a chicken with its head cut off when you play when you're like 6 years old, and playing like offensive tackle. I think I was my first position, which is funny. But I love football. And then even I remember in like 7th, 8th grade, my dad's office, he had these, would have his office pool.
Yeah.
And you picked every game.
Yeah.
And I would always do that every year. And I think I won it one year when I was a freshman in high school. And then whenever I would call my dad's office, there was a guy that used to pick up that worked under him. And he would ask me, he was like, who do you like in this game? Who do you like in this game? Just a complete degenerate. It's funny. I actually ran into him. This is maybe 25 years later at a wedding recently. And he got my number. And he's texted me again for plays. He's like, I'm 65 years old. It's funny. So yeah, started out like office pools, and then opening up like I think back then it was my first account was probably a Bodog account.
Yes.
And I made lots of beginner mistakes, which we'll get into today. But I was obsessed early on with pleasers, which are like the opposite of teasers. And you instead of like getting 6 points to a side, you would give up 6 points. Just a terrible bet. But they were very tempting, just like parlays, all the stuff that beginner bettors do. And and then I got into finance, got my CFA, master's in finance, and worked in the derivatives field for about 8 to 10 years before I left to help start Action. And that background, statistical background, mathematical background, obviously helped with modeling and other things, refining my process over time. But it is a labor of love, and it's the beautiful thing about it, and this is with any sport, you're never going to master it. No, you're never going to be able to hit 100%. There's always room for improvement, and the markets are always getting more efficient. So it's a kind of a cat and mouse game. So yeah, it's I love the challenge of it, and especially the NFL, one of the most efficient markets in the world. And here we are today, and hopefully can have a winning season.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, Stuckey. I also remember playing in my mom's office pool back in the day and then checking on, Sunday night, being like, oh, I'm 10-2. I might be live for Monday Night Football. So
Yep.
absolutely the kind of history that goes into it and the love of it. And like you, I was a middle school math teacher, right? So I'm trying to find ways to bring that engaging content even to students. Well, you have obviously been doing it for a long time, just like all the folks here at Action. I mean, we've been doing this for years. We've been running around with some of the sounds from under the ground, but suddenly now they uttered it loud in front of a crowd like fronting's allowed. You mentioned people are all talking about how, oh, they got a 90% hit rate, right? And come buy my picks. And that's absolutely trash. So we need to give people real talk. You mentioned how you weren't the best at it to begin, right? You made some of those mistakes. Let's go back to that for people who are novices in this game or trying to start to bet the NFL, which is the sharpest market out there. What are some of the things people can do to actually start to learn and take their lumps?
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do as an inexperienced bettor to at least not lose as much as you've been losing and potentially, win a little bit of money in a very difficult market. I mean, the first thing you can do is take advantage of a lot of the softer opportunities out there. And what I mean by that is well, number one, you have to have a lot of outs. So the more outs that you get, the more books that you have, the more advantageous you're going to have. Shopping around is the number one piece of advice I'll give to anyone. That adds up over time, getting the best number that you have available to you. And now in the US, there are so many bonus offers, promotions. Take advantage of all of those. But there are books that aren't as sharp as others. They're slower to react to news, to injury news. And, there's a lot of, it's not like back in the day where you would have a lot more rogue lines. Now everything kind of moves in unison, but some books are slower to move and you can have different prices for various reasons. That adds up over time. So having as many books as you can is very advantageous for many reasons. Also, take advantage of some of the softer markets, the prop markets. I only have about 50. I think only about 50 prop bets over 5 years. I don't really bet player props. Prop markets are blowing up.
You're kind of acknowledging that you don't dabble in some of the markets that might actually be softer and ripe for the picking.
They're so much more popular now. It's probably something that I should reconsider. I don't really have time to do it. It's not my area of specialties with player projections, but there's so many people out there. I shouldn't say so many, but at our company alone, there's a couple that are just masters at this. I'll mention Sean Kerner, who is just the king of NFL player props. And when he puts one out, for like a Monday Night Football game, it'll be published and then everyone rushes to bet it and it'll move, say it's like under
5 yards,
62.5 yards. It'll move, 5 yards right away. So, these things you have to be like following injury news, player props. If you want to follow someone, you have to be, it takes time and you have to be dedicated. You got to put notifications on. And then again, you have to have various outs. So you can say, okay, under this, I have all your books up. Let me see where, we're going to have a player prop tool where you can see where the best line is for you. And that will add up over time. But that's a great way to build your bankroll. Books they can't spend time on every single player prop. And it's just an offering they do. They do these same game parlays, which I think that you should probably avoid from an EV perspective. But it's just a menu of offering, and they're going to go look at how much you can bet on them. There's a reason props you can bet a lot less because they're softer. So as a novice bettor, if you want to build a player prop model, you're probably not doing that since you probably have a full-time job, but you can follow people out there on the Action Network app that just crush player props. And that's how you can build a bankroll. There's, you want to bet early in the week on opening. You want to bet opening lines, which are softer in the NFL than say on game day when you have, after limits open up later in the week and you have just absolute whales. I mean, you can bet a lot of money on the NFL are going to shape a number pretty efficiently by the time kickoff happens. So you want to try to bet earlier in the week. They're similar to player props. There are things called Wong teasers. And what those are is you can tease two sides through as long as they're both through 3 and 7. Right. 6-point teaser. You want to have at least -120 or better. You can find some -110s if you're really lucky and have a good account still out there. They used to be even money like 10, 15 years ago. No matter who the teams are, this is a plus EV bet going through these two key numbers. And, I've done it. So I will do this to start a football season, and we'll have the teaser option taken away in the NFL on almost every account that I have. But it's a good way to build back. Now, some books are becoming smarter, and these will be like -140 where it doesn't really make sense, but make sure you check what the prices are. But these teasers, I do go search on Google Stuckey teaser guide, and I show all the math behind it and explain it. But that's an option that, depending on your book, could be out there. And some other things that I have written down here to prepare for this. Don't be a homer. You can actually, everyone wants to bet their team every week.
Sure.
And you actually might have, a small edge if you could remove your homerism. You follow your team so closely. You probably, are closer than odds makers. And maybe you have if you want to fade your home team, but people don't do that. So just try not to be a homer. And I would say, if you want to find someone that's profitable, long track record is what you want to make sure, and follow them on the Action Network app. But I would say the most important advice that I can give to anyone, two things in the NFL. It's a highly reactive market. So, go turn on ESPN or any channel, and everyone's talking about the NFL all week long. So if you can have just the mindset of buying low and selling high in the NFL as a general principle, I think you'll be better off. Team looked horrid last week, and they're playing a team that looked really good. You might, buy low, sell high. It's kind of the overarching philosophy of my NFL betting.
I was gonna say, like, week 2 of the NFL season, they call it overreaction for a reason. Give me a team. You lost by 3 touchdowns last week, I'll be all over them, kind of with that overcorrection. And I love how you talk about the bandwidth out there, right? The books have a finite capacity as well, right? And everyone is betting the NFL, so they pay more of their attention to make sure that those lines are sharp outside of, say, some of the props and, as opposed to, say, like Ivy League women's college basketball. They're not using that much attention to try to make sure those lines are as sharp. One thing I do want to follow up with you, though, you mentioned betting early in the week, right? And is that still the same over the last couple of years, specifically with COVID going on and the kind of moving target of player availability even throughout the week? We would see ridiculous line movement based purely on testing and availability. So you talk about betting earlier in the week. Does that kind of still hold true even now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a theoretical question in that, and it comes down to your aversion to risk. But, if you could get completely screwed in the COVID world, where, you bet early in the week and then your starting quarterback tests positive for COVID, right? So you want to wait on the injury news. But do you think that you're going to be first to react to that injury news? Probably not in the NFL market, especially if you're a recreational bettor. There's leaks too, and you're probably not going to be first, and the lines move quickly and they'll come off the board right away. So my mindset is, unless there's like, hey, this team had some COVID cases last week, so maybe they're a little higher risk of it spreading. That's how I used to think about it. But, if I liked a number and a spot early in the week, I would bet it. And just knowing that over time, hopefully, ideally, it would all wash out, the times you get screwed and the times you benefit from it. But if you're not comfortable with that, then in this new COVID world, you probably want to wait. You mentioned week 2 dogs. Yeah, I mean, historically, just week 2 underdogs in general in the NFL are about 53% over the past 25 years. But teams who lost week 1, 55%, about a 7% ROI past 30 years. Teams who lost week 1 by double digits, 58% historically. So I like those week 2 dogs that lost, maybe got blown out, especially around a key number. Around a 3, a 7, probably the most important thing to know in NFL betting are the key numbers: 3, 4, 7, 10, 14. 3 is king. It's the most important number in NFL. But if you're around a key number, then you might get a lot more value than you would say that the line was around 5. You're getting like a half point of value based on week 1 overreactions, and instead of a 6.5, you're getting a 7, or instead of a 2.5, you're getting a 3. That's massive. And that's something you want to watch for in the market all week. That's something I spend a lot of my time doing, watching the market. I've done it just obsessively for 20 years. You'll start to pick up things why a line is moving a certain way early in the week. Maybe it's a pump fake when limits open, why it's moving this way. And you kind of start to understand it's just like the financial markets just by watching. But if you're around a key number, if you're around a 6, if you like a dog and you're at plus 6.5, you want to watch that. You don't want to bet it right now. And you want to watch, there's sharper books out there. You want to watch, okay, is it starting to tick down? If it is, maybe I'll lock in my 6.5, but let me wait to see if it's going to go to 7. If it's at 2.5, let me go to 3. And, it's those key numbers, massive to understand, but don't buy points. You have to stop. Like there's things that people do, these crazy parlays when they first start out buying points. That's just, you're trying to, it's loss aversion bias. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense on a 3 sometimes, depending on the price, but just as a general rule of thumb, stop buying points. It's going to cost you money over time. And who cares? That one time that you lost by the half point, it's going to happen. You just have to accept it. And that leads me to my most important point. And this goes for any sport that you're betting. Yeah. Most people lose money betting sports, an overwhelming majority. I think over 99% of people do. And which is funny because only about 1% of people admit that they lose money betting sports.
Now, if you look at social media, those numbers are definitely skewed differently.
Yes. But if I wanted to bet sports the entire year, and my process was, I use this example all the time. If I ask my little sister what I'm going to bet every day, I just wake up and I ask her, what am I going to bet? And then I bet the same amount of money on every single bet. What will happen over time, over a couple thousands of bets, is I'll break even. And I'll juice out. You'll lose juice, but you're not going to get hurt, right? Especially if you're a recreational bettor. You're never going to like, oh my God, I owe this amount or I'm down this much. You're just going to juice out. You have your entertainment value of betting the NFL. By the way, there are pools, contests out there. There's other ways to get your action where you don't need to be betting every game. You don't need to be betting every game. You don't need to be betting every primetime game. But the reason most people lose, and the reason people lose a lot, and the reason that there's, outside of addiction, that there's people that just go way in the hole, it's all behavioral biases. So I think one of the best things that you can do is, I tweet about this all the time, talk about it on our podcast all the time, is to just understand behavioral biases. Buy a behavioral finance book. Google, cognitive and emotional biases.
And discipline. It's hard to be disciplined when there's the shiny toy out there and the crazy multipliers. But the more prudent way is probably trying to just inch the rock up the hill, right, Stuck?
Yeah. And if you're down a lot, trying to double up or chase, it's it's only going to lead to bad things. It might work once or twice. If you're way up and then just going all in on a play.
You're not betting Hawaii overs late night on a Saturday though, chasing the dragon?
No, I mean, it's, if you're bad with this stuff, it takes time to learn. Of course. And you might have to get burnt a couple times before you realize. And some people unfortunately never learn how to do this, but it's the difference between someone that's basically just going to be a break even bettor without doing anything else and extremely losing bettor. Is all of the behavioral biases, the chasing, the tilt, trying to avoid tilt. You just have to accept, trust me, I've been doing this for 20 years. You're going to get screwed a lot, and it's going to happen, and you bitch about it, and then you move on. You try to remember the good beats, and that's all you can do. And you cannot compound a mistake. What already happened is happened. Vent however you want to vent, and then move on, because you can't let another bet impact your next one. And if you have trouble with it, just again, like I said, you want to be betting NFL early in the week anyway. You're betting a game on Sunday at the 4. You're trying to rush the 4:30 because you went 0-7 at 1 o'clock. You're probably don't have an edge there. You might as well you're just flipping a coin. The market's already so put your bets in before the day starts if you have trouble with this, and that's all you're going to do. Now I know you're probably going to end up getting drunk and then putting bets in, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Well,
But
that's outside the discipline as well, right? When I go to the Brazilian steakhouse and they have the red and the green coasters, sometime I have to turn the coaster over to red if I'm going to be a little bit disciplined. I understand, people are going to get excited or going to, bet the props of their favorite team. But if you actually want to make money out of this, you actually have to be a little bit more disciplined. But Stuck, you've mentioned a lot of concepts already, right? Like buying low, selling high, shopping around. But one of the things I want to get into a little bit more are the key numbers in the NFL. You talk about it, 3, 4, 7, 10. These are the usual permutations of scores because of the way scoring happens in the NFL. Why don't you tell the people here a little bit more about why those are the key numbers, why they are so important to betting? And Stuck, one thing that I want to know is that still the same? With the proliferation of 2-point conversions, with the proliferation of mixed extra points, with the proliferation on coaches going for it on 4th and 6 from their opponent's 32-yard line, are the key numbers still the same as we talk about it in the long term?
Yeah, they're a bit different, but for the high level, the biggest numbers are still your 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, and 3 is king. I mean, you score field goals and touchdowns. Which is why 3 is so important. And if you just Google, I'm not going to go into all the math, but if you just Google NFL key numbers, NFL score distribution, you'll see it's overwhelming. There are key numbers and totals as well, which you'll see. We have articles out on that as well on actionnetwork.com. But they've changed a bit. And like 8 is now, for example, 8 as a spread is a bit more important. Since 2015, extra point moved back, right? You get more missed extra points, more teams going for 2. More teams going for 2, down 14, right? You score and then hey, let's go for 2. Then you'll see this, and then everyone argues over it on Twitter while coaches are just trying to increase their win probability in regulation. But totals too, like 43, it's because of more missed extra points, more 2-point conversions. So it is, it has changed the distribution some, and we get more and more data on this each and every year. But your key numbers are still 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. What you want to do, and those are teasing through 3 and 7. Never tease through 0, by the way. Just get that in your head. You're not going to have. You're giving up 1 to -1. Right. You're paying to give up those dead points. Never.
But to that point, 8.5 looks real good, because if I can go from 8.5 to 2.5, I am getting through both 3 and 7, right? So when you talk about the kind of distribution of scores, right, going from covering something over a touchdown to getting me inside of a field goal, that may be something a little bit more effective, correct?
Yeah, massive. And you'll have so if you can find if there's an underdog out there, you wanted to tease it with say a 7.5 point favorite. And one book it's 1.5, the underdog's 1.5, and the other book it's 2.5. Not, you go to the 2.5, get over the 8 for the 2-point conversions. But you'll see how important teasers are and how plus EV they are. But for some books, books will skew lines for teaser protection. They'll go right from up to 9.5, right? 8, 9, kind of dead. 9's a dead number in the NFL. Go right up to 9.5, so that if you tease it down 6 points, you're not crossing that 3. So yeah, there are key numbers to keep in mind. And like I said, the biggest thing that you should keep in mind as a recreational novice bettor is that if you like a side around a key number, then wait for it. Start to monitor the market, start to understand the market. But if you see it's starting to come down, you don't think it's going to go back up. These are things you have to learn over time. Okay, then maybe I'll hit it now. But if looks like, okay, if it's holding steady, wait. Holding steady at 6.5, wait to see if that 7 comes, or wait on that 2.5 to see if the 3 comes, because it is that important over time. And then look, as I said before, you don't have to bet every game. So some people will really like a side, and they're not modeling games. They don't have a percentage edge that they're showing. And they really like a side, and they don't have okay, I like it to this number, and they'll just end up betting it anyway if it's at 6.5 and never goes to 7. Whereas someone who's doing it professionally might say, I like this at +7 -110 or better. If it never hits that, I'm not going to bet it. If as a recreational bettor, you're like, I like the side, it's on Monday Night Football, and you waited for the 7 all week and it never comes, don't just I mean, you don't just bet the 6.5. What you can do now with how prevalent live betting is go in and see if you can get a better number. And look, people want to sweat the Monday night game. That's a sweat in and of itself. You go in and you say, all right, and then you're rooting for, and you're rooting against your side right away. And then you're like, all right, and then you have your live markets up, your books up. And then in the NFL, I mean, you can, live betting is fairly easy. So go in and then wait to see if you can get your 7. Maybe you can get your 7.5. So with live betting, you don't have, this isn't 1998 where it's like, all right, if I don't bet this game before kickoff, that's it. So think of it that way. Like you could still have your sweat if you didn't get a bet in, if you never got your number that you wanted, especially around a key number. Those are so important in the NFL. Wait to see if you can get it live or the second half. And I bet you'll end up saving money over the long run.
This is the spitting statistician Dane Martinez and the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, Stuckey, here with the Action Network's expert guide to betting the NFL. The NFL being a uniquely sharp market with only 32 teams, not 300 colleges, and everybody on God's green earth trying to get some action on the NFL. Stuckey, we're in the offseason right now, right? So leading up to an NFL season, what are some of the things that you're actually paying attention to? I know everybody says they're in the best shape of their life as training camps start, but are you looking at player movement, coach movement, player development? What are some of the things you do to kind of prepare for the season? I mean, I've heard a lot about what the Vikings offense might look like or how Trevor Lawrence is going to be in year 2 under a new head coach that has a statue outside of the city of brotherly love. But what are the things you really zone in on to try to get information leading up to an NFL season?
Yeah, you can't fall too much in love with coach speak because it's all rosy.
Of course.
Every team is going to be better. Even with you read a lot of national previews out there.
Great group of guys. Incredible group of guys.
Every group is going to be better and improved from last year. So you kind of have to distill and take. Yeah, it's more art than science. Because I do a lot of reading. You do listening to podcasts. Do as much reading as I can, read all the previews, but a lot of it, it's just, I don't care about it. It's junk. But I spent a lot of time going back and looking at last year. Like really deep dives on teams and looking at my end of year power ratings, because the most important part of the season is your beginning power ratings. So, what's the starting point to that is your end of season power ratings. So going even deeper into team statistical programs. I mean, so many statistics and advanced metrics you can look at for NFL teams to determine, let's look at their injury situation, luck, and there's so much that you can look into to kind of get a feel for, all right, where was this team really, and do I need to adjust any of my end of season power ratings? Then you have the off season, right? And that's, you have players moving, you have coaches. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, from a scheme perspective, right, from a front office perspective, is this team really going to benefit? A good example is, I think the Ravens getting rid of Martindale, their defensive coordinator, is going to be a net positive. I think that he can actually do some good things with the Giants, who need to generate more pressure. He's very blitz heavy, but his time is kind of passed in Baltimore. Got a little stale. In the AFC, it just doesn't work. Like you blitzing Mahomes,
right? Mahomes,
all these quarterbacks who are 1, 2, and 3 in the NFL against the blitz, and go look at the Ravens scores against Mahomes and Burrow last year, up 40 and 45.
Yeah,
it just wasn't working. So
something on them too.
Yeah. So like it was a change. I think a new getting McDonald back is I think going to do wonders there. I love some of the moves the Giants made in the offseason from a front office coaching perspective. Love their draft as well. Then you got to figure you have to also account for the draft. A little more difficult because you're trying to project college kids in the NFL. A lot of times they're not going to have a huge impact. There obviously are exceptions, which you want to try to account for. But yeah, you're trying to then adjust the end of season power ratings, trying to get a feel for teams, but not over. There's only so much you could take from reading and listening because everything is kind of going to be, biased from their perspective, but you're trying to take nuggets here and there. And then once I have a good set of power ratings, which you're adjusting every day. I mean, you're looking, there's injury news could happen tomorrow, but then you want to compare to the market. So it is as we've talked about, arguably the most efficient betting market in the world, NFL spreads and totals. What reason why you can bet so much money on them? And from an odds maker perspective, it's the highest volume sport, and there's 100 fewer teams than college football. So like, trying to keep up with UMass compared to, an NFL team is a lot more difficult. So you have to respect the market in most betting markets, but especially in the NFL. So then I'll take, you can go and look at win totals, and they have spreads out for every game. So you can kind of derive what the market power ratings are. And then I would spend time comparing mine to the market, and then understanding first, determining where I am different, and then trying to understand why, and if I'm comfortable with that. Because I do respect the market in the NFL, and I can say, okay, I actually rate, this move or this coach, I think a little higher than the market. So I'm okay being higher than the market than this team. So then it's really getting your, then you're taking every team's schedule, simulating that, and then coming up with your win totals, and then, your projected spreads. But it's just constant information gathering. So much information out there, podcasts, articles, previews, magazines, Twitter, I mean, you name it. So just constantly trying to distill information and get some nuggets here and there, which is why I also think it's so important to watch games. I try to watch as much as possible, especially during the year, rewatch games during the week, and then you're tweaking, and it's a nonstop process. But that's the main goal of the summer, is to try and get my initial set of power ratings in a good spot that I'm comfortable with, and then understand where and why I'm different than the market, and adjust if necessary. And then, it's kind of a sort of a similar process during the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many sources of information out there, but be sure to make sure one of those sources is the Action Network. Download the Action Network app, subscribe to the Action Network YouTube channel, and you will be able to get all that information just like Stuckey is talking about. So you talk about in the offseason, Stuck, how you're getting kind of to your baseline power index, for lack of a better term, right? But then talk to me about week by week, day to day. What is the routine like on an NFL week? And do you put stock into things like, injury reports or travel schedules? The West Coast team playing a 1 o'clock start on the East Coast, Andy Reid after the bye, things of that nature. What's your process like in a given week, day to day?
Yeah, that, the West Coast to East Coast thing brings up a good point. Like, especially in a market like the NFL, that used to be a profitable angle, but
now it's baked in.
It's baked in now. It's gone, and that's something to keep in mind with almost any sport, especially nowadays. Something that was profitable in the past doesn't necessarily mean that it will be in the future, right? Like, teams have also gotten smarter with traveling, and are able to do it more efficiently. But the market can also price these things in, which they have with many different examples. And in some cases, they can actually overprice it. And that's why betting is very difficult, and why professionals have their own number and they bake these things in. So, yeah, I mean, I will bake in buys and travel, but it's, for the most part, those things are priced in to the market. There are still some situational spots, which is more art than science, kind of incorporate that.
Third road game in a row.
Yeah, that I will bet, but they're all one-off. It's not, I don't have any blanket rules. Gotcha. These are kind of just the one-off things that I'm incorporating that are the subjective part. I mean, some people are just purely numbers-based bettors, which I'm not. I have my number.
It's art form and science, right? And the best people in this game are able to kind of code switch or understand how to translate both what the charts and graphs are telling you and what your eyes and hearts, especially for a guy like you who's been doing it for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the NFL, I'm not gonna have the best model. And think about how many smart people there are modeling the NFL. And you're pretty much going to be in the ballpark to a lot of people. It's not rocket science. That's rocket science. Those little edges are what differentiates the best from just being good. But where I think I get all of my edge in the NFL is with matchups, trying to understand the matchups. And that's what I spend most of my time on. I think that there's still inefficiencies in the market when it comes to offensive and defensive line play, and especially in the secondary. So if you look at resources like, PFF, which grades secondary play, but how they're like grading, it's very difficult to do. Like, okay, who was responsible for this completion? And, it's very high variance with a cornerback, gives up an 80-yard play. Maybe it was on the safety. Maybe you don't know what the call was. I spent a lot of my time trying to understand secondaries,
like, what was his actually responsibility?
Did
he blow that coverage, or was he supposed to have a safety rolling over the top to help him out? It's very hard to actually understand that just watching the game.
Yeah, and then trying to decipher, okay, where are the mismatches, the enormous mismatches in a game, and could it swing this game? A really good rush offense against a rush defense that hasn't been exposed yet, but I think can be exposed and might not be priced into the market. Things like that. So I spent a lot of time on matchups, trying to identify players that might be over the hill, like in the secondary, trying to get ahead of that. But yeah, I spend most of my time trying to understand, okay, what's from a scheme perspective, how is this game going to play out, and can it provide me with any edge? My numbers, my starting point, and then all these other subjective factors kind of push me over the edge. But during the week, it's reading, rewatching, and adjusting.
I'm like, this team is going to play too high safety against the Chiefs all the time. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire will actually get some touches in this one, and kind of understanding what teams are trying to do and what adjustments may be made when they are faced with that. It's not sexy, right? But to understand that an offensive line can completely kneecap a team's chances. Most people, the public bettor, is not thinking about that. Just go ask Todd Bowles about that in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago as a perfect kind of example. But Stuck, you mentioned like there's no rules of thumb that you'll just play blanketly, right? But we did talk about things like overreactions in a week 2 and some other kind of rules of thumb or tricks of the trade. What would you describe as an ideal betting opportunity? You've run all the numbers, you've got all the information. Like, when something pops up on your radar, what could it be that's really flashing bright red? Like, I need to make a play here.
Yeah, and by the way, going back to all the stats you can compile, try to like and offensive line play, these schemes. This is where the sharpest bettors have disagreements, which is why I think that there's some opportunities in the market. Some people will decipher this a little different. Everyone has access to like turnovers and which team has been lucky, but maybe look at you want to try to go a level deeper to understand some of these teams. When did the turnovers happen? When did the fourth downs happen? Come up with your own advanced stats. Everyone is kind of scraping the same things, but just keep that in mind. But yeah, I'll give you an example of an ideal NFL against spread opportunity. I mean, obviously week 2, I'm just talking in general, buy low, sell high.
Fair enough.
Kind of the same thing in the financial markets as well. Like, for example, because you want to keep in mind, week 2, one of the hardest things as if you have a model and you're making your own power ratings,
fidelity to that model.
Yeah, but week 1, you don't want to overreact early in the season, but you're also making your biggest changes to your power ratings early in the season. So there could be a team that was really bad in week 1, and that's just because they're going to be really bad. And especially in college football, you end up chasing this team if you're not adjusting fast enough all year and betting them and losing all your money. These teams that end up being really bad and really good, and your numbers never really catch up. So that's where the art comes in, knowing when to adjust and then when to not overreact. And so that's why I don't like any of these overarching things. And the art and science, it takes time, experience, understanding the market. Mm-hmm. It is not easy. But I'll give you a perfect example is 2019 week 9 Ravens. This is my second biggest NFL bet of all time. My first is actually I lost I had the Falcons +4, and I think +4 and then some under, which I compared to the +4, I don't care. But against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, 28-3. I have to hear about it over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So, but this is my second biggest NFL bet, and Ravens at home. And this will illustrate kind of a lot of things that we were talking about. Week 9 off a bye. I respect Harbaugh and that staff. Right. Harbaugh's been great off the bye. Playing the Patriots at home. Patriots were 8-0. And if you dug into the Patriots, and the Patriots with Brady and everyone, no one wants to fade them. And they were 8-0, but they played nobody the entire year. I mean, I think Luke Falk was one of the quarterbacks they played. They also had the most extreme turnover luck I'd ever seen in my life. Just a completely fraudulent 8-0. I mean, they beat who they should have beat, but they were the turnovers, the block punts, block kicks. I mean, and then their rush defense numbers, which the Browns kind of exposed, I remember, were troubling. And the Ravens off a bye coming in here, perfect opportunity, prime time at home to sell the Patriots. And guess what the Ravens do? The best rushing team in the NFL at the time. And this is where I thought the weakness of the Patriots defense was.
Right.
Everything was aligning, like, your matchup, your situation, the number. Now, because of this, because the Patriots, the NFL is such an efficient market, but there's still opportunities where lines are off. And this is perfectly illustrated. Just halfway through the season, some of the and early in the week, some of the softer book. I think that for a minute or two, it opened at 6. Ravens +6 at home. It was outrageous. I remember tweeting about it the Sunday night before at the bar. I'm like, this is crazy. Hit this if you can bet it. And then I ended up betting it at like 4. And then it ended up closing at 3 later in the week. So if you bet it right away, you got 5, 6. If you bet it, still that night, you got 4. And then that's, the next day it's 3. And that's where it closed. And if the Patriots won by 3, a very common result, then anyone who got it early won, anyone who got it late pushed, and that adds up over the time. The Ravens ended up winning by 17. But that's just everything into one, like the matchup, the spot, the buy low, sell high, getting it early in the week before it's going to come down, knowing, the market and that there's going to be sharp money coming in on the Ravens. And then the number was off as well to my number, which I made a pick. So everything lining up with the buy low, sell high, overarching theme. That's an example of the perfect spot, which you might get like maybe 1 or 2 a year in the NFL.
Expert's Guide to Betting here. This is the NFL edition on the Action Network, where, like I say all the time, we are not just giving you a fish, we are teaching you how to fish. Dane Martinez, the spitting statistician, and my guy, the prime minister of degenerate nation, Stuckey. Now, you mentioned that you don't necessarily bet a ton of props. However, one of the other markets that you did reference, which is growing in popularity in the NFL, is betting live. I want to talk to you a little bit about betting the NFL live, because one of the things I believe is game script and game flow is kind of king. You can see a team that is down by 2 touchdowns and live get something like that quarterback's passing attempts prop, and kind of understanding what that team is going to do down for the next 2.5 quarters. I think about points being scored in the final 2 minutes of the first half, what happens there, and how teams are playing when they know they're going to get the second half kickoff. There's all sorts of subtle nuances. What are some of the things you look for when betting the NFL live, Stuck?
Main thing, again, going to harp on the same things, but multiple outs, right? These live numbers can differ. You want to get the best ones. Juice could differ significantly. If you want to have all of your options at your fingertips, if possible, getting the best number. And so key numbers are obviously really important to me. Mm-hmm. So I might go into a game being like, I like this team, never got my number, but I have a target, right? And I'll go in and say, once it hits this, then I'm going to bet it.
Right.
But everything else, I don't have like a mod, is just, I'm going on feel and watching, and then trying to, team might be up 10-0, 13-0, and it's all on flukes, right? And it could, and trying to pick up on certain things that the market might not, because everyone's going to see, okay, there was a turnover, a lucky turnover, and everyone wants to go bet this team. But, oh, look, there was these little one little fluke missed coverage thing led to a huge play. All right, I'm seeing something in the trenches where this team's going to be able to take advantage. So really paying attention to some of, again, the matchup things, and also understanding some of that going into the game after handicapping it all week, what I'm looking for and saying, okay, yeah, this team really does have an advantage here. Maybe it hasn't worked out so far, but now they're down. And I think that I'm getting a better number, again, key number, best number. And now I want to come in. So my live betting is a lot of art, and then incorporating everything I did all week, and then just trying to figure out where the market is so I can get the best number, and then obviously watching for key numbers. But it's a lot of matchup stuff for me, understanding how a team got there. And then look, back to softer books, softer markets. There are softer books out there. Watch for injuries. And if a quarterback, and in college, this is even more true. If a quarterback gets hurt and looks really bad, like a star quarterback and looks really, really bad, you'll see quickly it'll come off the board at most places, but there's going to be books that are slow to react. And that happens during the week too. Like you hear a quarterback is ruled out with COVID, or check, you're going to have softer books. See if there's a rogue number still out there. You got to be quick. You got to be utilize notifications always on your phone. It's but yeah, those are some of the things that I look for when betting live.
Yeah, I mean, anything from, like you said, matchups to game script to even if someone goes into the blue tent can be a tell for a live bet. Stuckey, my last question for you here on the Expert's Guide to Betting the NFL is, I mean, everybody, like we talked about, right, is chasing or looking for that high. What is for you the ultimate high in betting the NFL? Is it kind of, seeing that backdoor cover that you've been talking about all week, or a team that you indexed early in the season kind of being higher than the rest of the market, and all of a sudden they are 7-3? What is it for you that kind of is that boost of adrenaline or that thrill you're still chasing when betting the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, every bet is, I love it as much as the past one. And it's a puzzle and a sweat, and it's so fun. I love it. I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. Some people get tired of like the sweat, and some people don't even watch their bet. No, I am all in, and I think there's a lot of value that you can gain from watching these things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the highs for me, obviously, like not going to overtime is nice for me. But anyway, a dog going down the field in epic fashion, and punching it in the end zone on like fourth down after converting a bunch of fourth downs to get in the back door, especially in the NFL where it's not like college. You onside kick it and the other team can return it. I've lost that way in college. And getting in that back door and make the last play, 1 second to go, nothing better than that. Except for
when there's like 17 laterals on the last play of the game, and then a turnover, and it winds up being 7 points or 6 points the other way.
I've never had a lateral go my way. And I've had 6 that have gone against me in the last play. I hate fan laterals. They shouldn't count. Touchdowns shouldn't count. Yeah, I always will tweet out once we get a back door though that if a team is say a team goes, I have a dog that's like +5, right, and the other team just scored a touchdown to go up 4 with like 8 seconds. You always see me tweet, wait, kickoff return. We have laterals. We have laterals coming.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thrill for me is when a team, when you have the underdog and the favorite is goes down instead of scoring, and then that in the NFL, where it's not like college, the NFL, it's like we're not messing around. It's not like we don't need to put style points up. We're taking knees when we should take knees. Why sometimes, I shouldn't say why I love fading Brady, but why when I have money against Brady and he has the ball up, but he's not covering, I know that he's probably going to run the last 4 minutes out in methodical fashion, and then get his team, throw a little out on like 3rd and 4 for 5 yards at like the 10, and then come out and kneel it. The Eagles game comes to mind. By the way, depending on what number you got in that game, it mattered. Yeah, I had the Texans when Nick Chubb went down at the 1 yard line. That was just because you have that feeling where it's, oh, you're done. He broke, and then he goes down. I think Brian Westbrook with the Eagles was the first one. That's the other one I was going to say.
Yep.
And then we've had a lot of others do it since. But that feeling of, and in college, they never go down. But that feeling of, oh my God, I just lost, to, oh my God, he went down, and the knees are coming, is just a thrilling swing of emotions, and something I'll never get tired of. And you can follow people on the Action Network that you trust, that we have a lot of smart people out there. You follow myself, but having a good network of people, whether it can help you get a bet down or just information. So like that's what I spend a lot of my week doing too. I have like For example, I have a really sharp Bills friend who will send me, he's looking at all the stuff in his team, right? And then I'm trying to do the same, but he's immersed in his team way more than I am, and I'm trying to handle them all. So he'll send me these like really insider type articles, or say, look at this, look at, we're much better with this offensive line formation with him out, and then just give me little nuggets to look at, talking to just as many sharp people as I can to get little nuggets here and there. I'm a one-man shop, and I don't like to talk to someone too much to distill what, kind of to bias myself.
Confirmation bias, right?
But having a good network, kind of like, and then getting just little nuggets here and there that you can look into, the people that are really focused on their team and really sharp, that information is king, and that will only make you a smarter, better.
No, absolutely. You are always and constantly kind of consuming information. You don't always have to be the smartest person in the room, but if you know the smartest person in the room, that'll work just the same. Absolutely,
Yep.
Stuckey. And remember, consuming this information, you could always do on the Action Network app by subscribing to the Action Network YouTube channel and checking out all of our folks, whether it be on social media or on the app. So like I was saying before, this has been another episode of the Action Network's Guide of the Expert Series, this time How to Bet the NFL. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you learned something from it. Have a good one. We'll talk about it more next time.